On today's episode, this little guy, we're going to see what we can do with him, if anything. Who knows? I never have a plan. Well, I found this little guy at a garage sale in the neighborhood for $5 whole. The faceplate is non-existent. There is no markings or brand name on this. The case, however, is in really good shape other than like a little nick right there on the veneer. It's good. And this speaker grill, I mean, in a video it looks a little rough, but I think even this is just a little dirt. It might clean up just fine. And if we spin it around back here, it's got all the tubes, but I don't see a power transformer or electric cord or anything else that would generate the high voltage enough to get these tubes up and running. So I don't know if we can use this as a radio, or we might take this out and just use the cabinet to make a little retro TV cabinet. I'm going to take the chassis out in a little bit and just kind of see what we've got going on. Well, this isn't totally an electrical hazard, not by much. I don't think there's anything salvageable or really fixable in here. I mean, this is really way beyond my capabilities just for an AM radio. I would have loved to isolate the amplification circuit and made a little boutique guitar amp, but I think this is going to be better served as an enclosure for a retro style TV set, which fortunately I've got the innards for. And here is the donor TV set that's going to go in there. This is a little guy. I mean, hand for scale. It's only a 15-inch. Well, it's classified as a 15-inch diagonal. It's a Dynex, which is Best Buy's house brand until they changed it to Insignia a few years back, I guess, to skirt any warranty claims they would have against this. So this was cheap. I mean, it's badge engineering. They just bought out, whatever they can get dirt cheap and slap their own name on it, like Radio Shack did with their realistic brands. But Radio Shack actually used some good things back in the day. Hell, their synthesizers were Moogs that they used, and those are great. So the best thing about this is that it has almost every available input I would need for a test bench: HDMI, VGA, S-Video, RGB, composite. I mean, it's got it all. So this is going to make a great little test bench set. Oh, there goes the antenna down there. But the most remarkable thing is that it actually came with the factory remote. And just trying to power it on. It's not going to power on when I got the camera rolling. It was working earlier, but we turn it on. And unfortunately, all the buttons are nice and easy accessible on the side here. And let's see if it pulls up the channel. They did a channel scan. And I have it on a non, copyright strike thing. So, yeah, who cares about discount luggage or whatever they're trying to hawk on us? Yeah, it might need new batteries. It sporadically works. So let me just turn this down here a bit. There we go, it's better. Plus it glitched out, which is always awesome. So the plan is I'm going to have to decase this guy because the speakers down here make it just a hair too tall to fit in the enclosure of the old radio. So the plan is to decase this, remove the speakers, kind of position them somewhere in there, maybe along the back, and make maybe an extension panel. I don't know. I might not need one for these along the back here. we're going to see what we can do with this guy here. First order of business is to clean up the enclosure, the old radio. It's old, dusty, dirty. There was like some old mud diver nests that somehow got in there. We need to clean out. Plus, repair some of the chipped veneer. Might restain it, make it look really nice. I have some little retro-looking appliance legs that I found. Those will be perfect on there. So let's get to cleaning out the old radio first. Okay, the sound's going to be garbage because I don't have my little microphone. But I've got this kind of sanded down. I filled in some of the little dings in the veneer with some wood filler. And when I was kind of sanding it down, another little chunk came out. So we're going to apply some more and sand it down to where it's flush like this little guy. And then stain the whole things. And then I've been having these around for a few years now. I found them at the local Habitat for Humanity. Hard to read the price tag, but these were $5 for the whole set. And these are little tapered little stands. Put them on the bottom and stain them the same color. Maybe keep them this color, a little offset. May look good. Anyway, yeah, so I have legs now. So that's awesome. This thing was such an utter bastard to get out of the case. It was obviously never meant to be serviced. So what we have here, power supply board, all the other stuff. Now, what I want to do is put a little USB-C outlet. There is a USB jack here for service, but I doubt it puts out any kind of amperage that would let me run a Raspberry Pi, which is my ultimate goal, is to have one piggybacked onto here. So on the power supply board, they were kind enough to mark where we have 5 and 12 volt. What I'm going to do is take the board out, take this into the workshop, and hard solder a lead for a 12, a lead for a 5, and a lead for a ground. I'll try hooking up the 5 and ground, see if that puts out enough amps. If it doesn't, I have a transformer. I'll go to 12 volt, but with the drop in volts, you get the boost in amps. That'll power the Raspberry Pi. So we're going to go take care of that right now. Well, it boots, but I get the little lightning bolt of annoyance here. It goes on and off, but just to be on the safe side, I think I'm going to use the 12 volt rail and use a transformer to get a more stable amperage. That's a good sign that it at least half the time has correct amperage, which means a 12 should do the trick. Let me hook up that power supply, the transformer, and see what happens. Okay, so we're running fine. No little lightning bolt warning sign, so the amperage is good. Display seems to be working fine. I'm gonna put on a TV station and see if we still have audio and things like that to make sure. Yeah, that's a normal thing. It's waiting for mode audio to log in. So that's totally normal. I hope it should be. I think it just went to the headless unit part of this. Let me put down the camera because I don't have my tripod ready and I can't do all this with just 2 hands. So hang tight. All right, we have audio. Everything seems to be working fine, except the sound is a little tinny, and that's because these speakers are tiny and they're garbage. Fortunately, I have a pair of bigger TV speakers I got out of a larger Samsung, and they are both 8 ohms. These are 8 ohms. One's out of Samsung are 8 ohms, so they should just work perfectly. The viewing angle on this is kind of wonky. There it is. So, it's an older TV, doesn't have the really great viewing angle as some of the newer ones do, but, $15 is $15. So, next step, we're going to put the new speakers in and try to test fit it in the enclosure.
Just a heads up, the following clip is going to be hysterically awful. The audio, unbeknownst to me, somehow got a buttload of reverb and echo put on it. I don't know how, where, or why, but yeah, it is horrible. So just endure it for a few minutes and then it returns to normal. I promise.
Progress update. Well, I got the cabinet totally stripped down and kind of replaced or fixed the veneer a little bit here. Pull this out here. And decased that monitor, and I have it mounted. Let's see if I can get this down here so you can see. Ooh, tracking shots. I'm getting fancy now. Back into the side here. It's a little dark, but it just kind of, I had to put little strips of wood on either side to make a little bracing for it. Fortunately, the screen had perfectly symmetrical little mounting screws there and there. I was able to get some angle brackets in there, and it fits well. I mean, it looks good, still operational. Probably going to stain it. Nice kind of reddish thing. See how that works. As far as the access panel down there, over the course of probably the last 2 weeks, I've been finding flat panels that have been thrown out on Craigslist. I mean, not Craigslist anymore. Facebook Marketplace. People having curb alerts saying, "Look, broken TV, come and get it." So I went and got it, and everyone I found to get the panel off, there are so many really horrible solder joints. It's not really worth it. Even for like the RCA plugs down here, they use such weird or really horrible quality solder that it's hard to wick it off of there to be able to remove it. I mean, they're totally non-removable, non-reusable. So what I really may have to end up doing is just buying a set of like a bulkheads. I have the RCAs from previous projects. That's no big deal. But like the HDMI, the VGA, and the S video down there, I might have to buy those little panel mounts and just make little extensions and put on the back here. A plan for the back of this is to make it like the original. They used basically what looks like pegboard. It was just a composite wood press board with holes in it to use for ventilation. It was nice and cheap. You can cut it out, custom cut it, and that's what pegboard is. So just get a little piece of pegboard, slap it on the back. I actually have the speakers somewhere around here that I had harvested out of a nice Sony, one of the curbside finds. And I don't have them handy just yet. Oh, here they are. Sorry about the camera moving around and all the mess in the background, but these little Sonys here. These are nice little 7 ohm, perfectly matched to the output of the board here. And these actually sound really well. I actually had about 3 different pairs, maybe 4 different pairs of speakers that I was able to harvest and compare the sound of them, which is kind of cool. They all ohmed out at about 7.5 ohms, which must be a standard for these TVs. So that worked out very well. And the ones that came out the Sony's Big Shot are the ones that sounded the best. So we're going to be using those, and those are going to mount to the back. Like a normal flat panel TV, they're going to face behind, and the sound is just going to be reflecting off the wall or wherever I end up, putting this or wherever it is. So there you go. Got the flat panel mounted. I'm going to remove it so I can stain it, because the last thing I need to do is get wood stain on the LCD display here. And then eventually make a custom bezel for this. Sort of like reminiscent of the old style TVs. If you just Google image, like mid-century television sets, they'll have like the oval around a bezel with the oval cutout around it. So it might do that. It's going to be near impossible to make one that kind of countersinks, and that would require like a 3D printer or something, which, I don't really have access to something like that. So we're just going to do it the old-fashioned way, make out of wood, probably paint it gold colored to match the aesthetic of the time, and maybe pad it a little bit on the inside. You can easily build it up. with layers of like plywood or small strips of wood or even foam or something, just to kind of eliminate a gap that's going to be there. And as far as control wise, I have the side control panel, and it's just basically a little circuit strip. In fact, this is it right here. And you have power, source, menu, channel up and down, volume up and down. And I was going to put that maybe on the back or on the side somewhere. Ideally, I would have loved to have it convert, maybe get some rotary encoders and convert it to just up and down or on and off for the volume and the channels. But that is really complicated. And, you know, this is a quick little build here. It's not a quick little build, but that's going to be really, really, really complicated. And that's something I guess further down the line I could look into. But just for now, this might just make some external buttons, solder some jumper wires to these pads right there, these little bits. And that way we can control it from an external push button. And then maybe on the back where we have the access panel, eventually maybe have another one with all just the buttons, you know, to control that. But the RF sensor right here, this little guy here, I'm going to try and mount it in the front down there somewhere. I just need to extend these little wires. It's actually only, what is that, like maybe 4 or 5 communication wires. That's nothing to cut, splice, and resolder an extension just to have this little sensor poke out of the front corner somewhere. So there you go, right there. That's it. So let me get to staining this guy and come back with another little progress update, hopefully. Not just, this thing's gone to hell and this is a piece of firewood now. So fingers crossed, y'all. Well, here's a nice progress update. It kind of looks funny because I have the wide angle lens enabled on my phone because I am rapidly running out of room in my little home studio, workshop, whatever. But trust me, this is perfectly square. It just kind of bows out with the lens. I went ahead and I refinished it, gave it a nice red stain. You can even see that where I had to patch the veneer, it actually kind of matches up decently. I mean, it's not perfect, but you know, if you're not looking for it, you might not even see that. The screen is mounted to the side with these. I had to add some little strips of wood that came out the original radio, and using some L brackets mounted it like this. Let me stop this so I can turn around and you guys can see the back. And here is the back. I mean, it's just the monitor held up by these little angle brackets on there. I did happen to find on Amazon, oops, sorry about that, my finger got in the way there, some wall plates, I guess, used for AV installations and things like that, that had a SVGA, S-Video, and some other jacks on it for a good price. So that will be my patch panel. And I'm going to cut out some pegboard and cut it to exact size it is. I'm thinking I'm going to put some hinges that way, and some magnets that way it'll just kind of fold down and fold up, or up, down, whatever is easier. Extend all of these, and you can see the legs actually came out really decent too. These were, well, not really unfinished. They were natural wood, but they had a coating of polyurethane, and 3 out of the 4 were beautiful. I think they were just pine, and it was a really light colored wood with like a small golden finish on it. But one of them had all kinds of like imperfections in the grain. It almost looked like it was burned or something. Maybe that's why they got rid of it. So I got some Krylon gold leaf spray paint from Hobby Lobby, and that worked out beautifully. It gives it a nice dull kind of gold look, which fits the aesthetic perfectly. So these are just kind of all bolted in. I have a scratch or two here I need to touch up a little bit. So that's down the line, but it's not too bad. But it came out really good. So the next step is to make a speaker box. Now, as far as mounting the speakers, the space here is way too small to mount the speakers. So what I did, went back to Hobby Lobby and got this little project box. It's like, I don't know, it was on sale at normally $9. It was 40% off, so paid like $5 for it. Gonna stain it the same kind of, use the same stain as this. That way it matches. We're gonna just kind of mount it like underneath here and attach it to the base. And the plan is to cut out speaker holes right here in the lid. That way we can mount them from the back and then put a speaker cloth. And for the vintage style speaker grill, I went to Goodwill and I found this stuff here. It's just a tablecloth for $1.50, and it really looks like it could be old vintage speaker grill cloth. So for $1.50, I'm not going to complain. We just cut the holes, mount the speakers, put some Super 3M Super 77 spray, stick that on there, trim it up, make it look good. Probably tuck it behind, because this is actually a little door here. Tuck it behind it and see how that works. And also see if I can mount some control buttons. I have to solder some leads onto this old board. This is the old buttons here, and you just put them on these little contacts here. And I'm thinking like doorbell push buttons, something that looks older. I mean, I have tons of push buttons in my stock of garbage, but it's all, LED, or they all look brand new to black plastic, or, something that is not aesthetically appropriate for this look. So I think maybe if I can find some old doorbell, just round push buttons from Home Depot or something like that, and just have them down there. And if they're illuminated, that'd be great. But I think for the illuminated ones to work, I think they do have like a 120 volt neon or whatever. I think the doorbell itself, I don't know what a transformer. I know you have to have a transformer that goes down to the bell, to the button, and I'm not sure what the voltage is on that, but I'm pretty sure it's not going to be just like 5 volts or something like that that you can just use a common LED for. So we'll have to see what happens with that. But other than that, yeah, just staining this, putting the speakers in and hooking it underneath here. Maybe tap a hole here for the speakers to plug into the little port right there. And this actually, I had a program that would calculate, I guess, the bass reflex to put a little bass port in a speaker to maximize the bass of the sound. I'll see if I can find that. And if I put in the dimensions of this, and I guess the area of the speakers themselves, it'll tell you how long and what diameter the bass port needs to be. So that would be pretty cool if I get this thing sounding really good. So, yep, that's next on the agenda. So hopefully I have a good update after this.
Well, thanks to a couple of trips to the thrift store and Home Depot and finally Amazon, I think I have everything I need to make the back pane for the retro TV. This is the interface board here. It's got everything I need. All the inputs directly, not directly, but they're all there, all the ones I need. I have that and all the cables. I picked up a couple today for like $2 or $3. Got all I need. Now, this is the pegboard that I was going to use for the back, but as I was cutting and finishing it and sizing it up, it got dropped and a corner got bashed in. So it's a good thing I still have the rest of the sheet. I can just trace this out, cut it, be done with it, cut a hole out, put that right on top, run the cables, and that'll be that. Well, a little snag here. This interface board is not going to work. I found some really nice doorbell push buttons at Home Depot, hooked them all in, and every single one of them worked except the volume up. And the problem with that one is that it was locked down. It was shorted. And every time you would turn on a TV set, the volume would just get cranked up. So I desoldered all the lines, plugged it in, still did it. I actually desoldered and took off all the surface mount switches, and it still did that. And something tells me probably one of these resistors along here got shorted or something happened. And either way, it would be a real pain in the ass to fix. So, you know, this part, unless I can find another Dynex multi-input older monitor at a thrift store, yeah, this isn't going to be an option. But I do have a bunch of really cool buttons that I can use for future projects. So there's that. The good news is I did get this guy all fabbed up and looking good. Here's the input panel with all the inputs. Did a little power input right there. And I also gave it a nice coat of, I had some satin brown, dark brown paint. It looks really, really like what you'd see on the back of any old school TV set. So, on the back, just kind of screws holding it in, and of course, hot glue, which holds 99% of my projects together. So, yeah, I just have a whole bunch of cables I need to stretch from here back to there, and gonna hardwire. Well, I just need to solder this cable to that guy right down there, maybe some wire crimps or something to make that connection. But yeah, the back will be ready to go. And let's see if I can do this in one shot. Probably not. Let me stop this. Here is the finished speaker box with the grill on it. You kind of can see where the two speakers are. It kind of dents in a little bit. This is all kind of, I had the spray adhesive and went down, but then it kind of stretched out a little bit. But it's hiding underneath, and hopefully you won't really notice it. But, it's stained to match pretty much. And it works good. I just have it, I can get down here and, oh, dog alarm, must be the post office passing. It just kind of hook in, it's kind of dark, but in here, the plugs go straight in. So, yeah, speakers, sounds done. Maggie's coming in to inspect it, but yeah, that's it for the speakers. So that's good to go. So I just need to hook up the back, fix it on, and I guess the final steps, I might put a coat of stain under here just to have it look decent. And this looks like it's already kind of get some fuzz going there, like I got nicked or something. I don't know. Let me see if I can trim that off really gently. If not, I still have a bunch of material left. I could always rip it off, put it back on, spray some adhesives on it, and it'd be good as new. Well, almost as new. Well, not really. Kind of, well, you know what I mean. So that, and making the bezel for this guy here. So yeah, that's it. Alrighty, so the back panel's on and secured nicely with 4 wood screws, right there, in the corners. The back panel, I have most of the feed-through cables run. The only ones I'm missing are like the S-Video, a USB that will go, I guess, into the Raspberry Pi, which is further down the line, and the headphone jack, 3.5 millimeter, 1/8 inch, whatever unit of measurement you really want. So that's going there, and you'll notice these rabbit ears. I mean, these bad boys, they almost go all the way up to my ceiling. I got these probably at a garage sale or a estate sale. They're hard to find at thrift stores. And I'm sure you could probably get, newer ones that kind of mimic this for HD. But I mean, some of the prices I've seen are, $40-50 for them. I think I might have paid $2 for that. And they work just as well as those indoor flat panels, because when I first started working on this, I wanted to check the tuner. I hooked one up. It's like the RCA or GE brand, whatever they have at Walmart. And when I went to rescan with the rabbit ears, I got the same amount of channels, the main channels and all the secondary ones like MeTV and the MeTV Tunes and Antenna TV and all the other things like that. And then also like 90% of the other ones are going to be QVC and home shopping. So thank God you can delete them off of here. But yeah, it's looking good and sounding good. So I just got to get those cables, got to get a plan together for this bezel. But, the viewing angle, when you turn it, it's not all that bad as before as I thought it would. Now that it's mounted and upright, it's actually pretty decent. So there we go. Rabbit ears are flying and sounding good. And as with all of my projects, I go through a major design change at least 3 or 4 times throughout the course of the project. Gone is the external speaker box. It was very big, very clunky, and that grill cloth was just a pain in the ass to try and get looking great. So I went with my original idea and just put some speakers on the back of the cabinet here. Turn it over, you can kind of see that I got a hole saw, cut them out correctly. I may or may not cover these. I mean, you probably won't see them. They sound incredible, though. They sound a lot better than what was on there. So that's that. Second of all, I decided to use the Raspberry Pi that was in my little retro TV portable station project that I had going up for the longest time, because I didn't really see a need to have 2 retro TVs right next to each other. And that little Sony portable I had this project in, it was being held together with hopes and dreams and a lot of hot glue. It was just, it was really in rough shape when I got it. This at least will, be a nice housing for it. And it, if you've got a little TV set that looks retro, you might as well have your retro stations going. And see what we got going on right now, being that it's currently 11:30 in the morning. Yep, I got King of the Hill going. So at 1 o'clock, it changes over to the young ones. So it's right on schedule. The interesting thing I found out, / frustrating, is that I didn't know that the monitor had to be on for a few seconds before you could power up the Raspberry Pi. Otherwise, it would never sync up. If you power them on at the exact same time, the Raspberry Pi would not sync up and you wouldn't get a display. It took me forever to find that out. So I'm going to have to wire probably an additional just on-off switch on the back that'll let you turn on the Pi after you power it up. It's no big deal. I'm sure somebody who has a lot more electronics genius than I do could wire up a timer delay or something to where it would kick in after a few seconds. But look, an on-off switch is a lot easier and less headaches. Also, because this is a Raspberry Pi 4, I guess the wattage requirements are a lot greater than the 3s. So these little power leads that I had coming off of the monitor rails were not nearly enough to power it. So I had to get my own little power supply. This is actually the guts out of a 9-volt, 2-amp wall wart that worked just fine. I have that going into the little voltage regulator right there. The soldering iron cable keeps getting in the way there. Sorry, folks. That regulates it at the 5 volts and the correct amperage, and that keeps that guy nice and happy. So there it is. Little update. The legs are getting a better coat of gold leaf paint because I did not coat them with really anything, just a gold leaf. And I didn't know that gold leaf paint is highly susceptible to scratches, nicks, whatever. It's not really great paint. So it looks pretty, but I'm going to have to put a couple of coats of polyurethane on it just to make it nice and durable. So they're out getting that while the sun's out baking everything to a crisp. So there it is. I cleaned up the wiring a bit. I mean, obviously not all of the feed-through wiring. That's just going to be a fact of life. That's just going to cram in here. We'll set it and forget it and don't ever think about it. So there it is, running the retro station. Just getting this done. And once again, the bezel, I hate to keep sounding like a broken record, but the bezel is the think I need to focus on next. But as far as working wise and running well, this is pretty much complete as far as working electrically, sonically, as far as the speakers and all. We're good. So we just got to pretty this little thing up and we'll see what happens. All right, so I've got the bezel roughed in. It's basically just the foam project core board or whatever you want to call it that you get from Hobby Lobby and whatnot. Have a little hole cut out down at the bottom there where the sensor can read the remote. So that's good like that. I'm going to smooth out the edges, paint it gold, and there's a sizable gap, probably half an inch all the way around. I want to see if I can make like a little, I don't know, maybe use some of the other pieces of core, the foam core, and put it down in there and maybe mold it or something so you don't see that gap. I don't know. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge. All right, well, that really looks like garbage. I mean, the gold paint just highlights every little imperfection, especially where it kind of got dented there a little bit. There's a like a crease there that, I don't know, just showed up. I don't know what's going on with this corner. It didn't look like that when it was plain and white. So I'm gonna do the thing I should have done before and just make it out of plywood. So I went down to Home Depot, got one of these 2 feet by 2 feet by 1/4 inch birch plywood. Gonna actually use this as the template. Just trace around it, put it on a table saw. That way I'm guaranteed straight lines and I'll be able to watch Speed Racer without being distracted by an ugly bezel. I got it masked off kind of decent. I mean, good enough, as they say. I have some bare oil rubber bronze. It's almost black, satin black spray paint. So I don't feel too confident in holding my phone while I do this. So I'm going to stop it, hit it with the paint, and then come right back. Okay, 1 thin coat is all I really need. So I'm going to let this dry for a bit and then peel everything off. Here's the bezel. A lot better now that it's made out of wood, although the paint, you can kind of see the wood grain shining through despite my best efforts of sanding it all down. But it's not too bad. And I made the inner bezel itself with some poster board, just kind of glued in and hot glue reinforced in place. You've got a couple like little gaps in here and there. It's not perfect, but you know what? For this little project, it'll do just fine. And there's the finished project. I mean, it's pretty much all done. The bezel sits nice and flush. There's still a few little imperfections, and you can kind of see some of the wood grain through the gold leaf. But other than that, I think she looks pretty good for what it is, which is an amalgamation of a bunch of thrift store finds. So, I mean, minimal cost. Probably the most expensive thing in here was the Raspberry Pi 4 that runs my little custom TV station, which I will do a video on that eventually because that's an integral part to this thing. But this is a great little piece that's also a functional test bench monitor. If I buy any kind of video gear with all the different inputs, it'll handle anything you can throw at it. So I hope you guys enjoyed watching it. And the rabbit ears, they're still doing their job, right? Even though this is coming over the Raspberry Pi, not broadcast. But yeah, until the next video, you guys take it easy.